Jessica. Looks bewildered. Our mic's on.
Okay, so since it's evening and in the interest of everybody's time, I think I'd like to get started on time so that we can end on time as well. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. My name is Claudine Locascio. I am the Executive Director of Japan America Society of Colorado. And I'm thrilled to see you all, but I truly wish that we were all together in person, as you know, and I'm sure you all feel the same. We have many people joining us today from around Colorado, from Japan, and from other states in the United States. One of my favorite parts of this Japan Currents program under normal circumstances is that we are provided the ability to fly in a speaker from Japan. And you all get to hear a voice and a point of view that you might not normally hear. And we get to show off our beautiful state and create new relationships. And of course, today we were not able to do that. We're so grateful that Shiotsuki-san from Panasonic is joining us today from beautiful Kyoto. But we certainly wish that that he was here and we were able to host him in Colorado in person. I want to thank all of you who were able to take advantage of ordering this special obento meal that was prepared for us by Chef Hashimoto at Restaurant Tokyo. We have tried very hard during this pandemic to support and highlight all the restaurants that have been so supportive of us over the years as a nonprofit. I feel like we're always asking them to donate a gift card or a discount or a coupon or something for all of the many events that we do. So we've really taken it on ourselves to turn that around and support them during this tough time. And Tokyo and Chef Hashimoto has definitely been there for us for well over 20 years. So we're very grateful for him putting together that amazing menu for us. And I would also like to thank our sponsors tonight, the Embassy of Japan and the National Association of Japan America Societies. They offer this event each year through a competitive grant process, and I'm very honored that our program was chosen. And I would like to introduce Peter Kelly, the president of NAJUS, to say a few words.
Thanks, Claudine. It's a pleasure to be to join this Japan Currents event. I'm Peter Kelly from the National Association of Japan America Societies in Washington, D.C. There are 38 Japan America Societies all around North America. Each of them has the same mission, which is to promote the U.S.-Japan relationship at the grassroots level locally. Yeah, the program that you'll hear tonight, Japan Currents, is part of a program offering that the National Association of Japan America Societies and our partner, the Embassy of Japan in Washington, D.C., offer to those 38 member Japan America Societies. This year, there are 15 Japan Currents events going on in the months of February and March. In each case, the local society gets to choose the theme, and speakers are invited from both the United States and Japan, with the purpose of keeping everybody informed with current information about topics in the U.S.-Japan relationship. Japan America Society of Colorado always does a great job in choosing interesting themes. This is another one. Last year it was outdoor recreation, and this year it is smart mobility. The pity for me is not being able to make that trip to join you. It's always a pleasure to be in Denver. I always enjoy it, and I miss not being able to be with you tonight. But what makes this event is the speakers, and we're also very grateful to the speakers, including to the state of Colorado and to Panasonic, for shedding light on a topic that I think we all want to hear about, and of course to the Japan America Society of Colorado, for Claudine and Jessica for organizing it. I look forward to the event.
Thank you so much, Peter. And now I'm going to turn this program over to our moderator for the evening. Jim Seidlecki is Deputy County Manager in Adams County and a member of the Japan America Society Board of Directors. Jim, thank you so much, and have a great event.
Well, thank you so much, Claudine and Peter. We're definitely fortunate to have such a supportive embassy, not only in Washington, D.C., but this great Japan America Society staff here in Denver. We want to thank them for all the work they did to set up this evening's forum. And to all of our friends joining us from Japan, Ohayo gozaimasu to all of you.
Ohayo gozaimasu. Thank you.
As Claudine mentioned, I'm proud to serve on the Japan America Society Board of Directors. And like so many of you, I'm excited and passionate about this topic and the innovative work that is taking place on both sides of the Pacific in this lane, pardon the pun, of smart mobility. We have a fantastic panel of subject matter experts joining us this evening. I'm going to take a moment and introduce them and then learn a little bit more about each of our panelists on the Japan America Society website, where you will also find a link to this forum for your future use. So if you hear something this evening that you'd like to share with a colleague tomorrow, there will be a recording available. Our panelists include the Executive Director of Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade, Betsy Markey. Prior to joining OEDIT, Betsy had acquired more than 30 years of leadership experience in a most impressive career, including representing Colorado's 4th Congressional District in Washington, and as Assistant Secretary for Intergovernmental Affairs for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. We also have Yasuo Shiatsuki. He is joining us from Japan, where he has worked as Panasonic since 1983. He is an electrical engineer by education. Shiatsuki-san has worked in a variety of capacities at Panasonic over the years, all building up to his current role as executive staff in the Mobility Business Strategy Office at Panasonic's headquarters. Keita Yasuda serves as a liaison between Panasonic's Smart Mobility Office in Colorado and the Panasonic Corporation in Japan. In his 20 years at Panasonic, he has worked on the worldwide Olympic marketing teams for both Beijing and the Vancouver Olympics. Keita is actually a graduate of the University of Colorado Boulder, so maybe he feels right back at home here in this office. Chris Armstrong is a transportation expert in his own right, having served in transportation departments in several states, as well as the U.S. Department of Transportation. Chris delivered the first U.S. prototype of a self-driving application that integrates wirelessly broadcasted traffic signal information with automated vehicles. We're also happy to have Baptiste Lepoitevin. Baptiste uses his background in embedded systems engineering and business development as Easy Mile North America's customer solutions architect. Baptiste is truly a global citizen, having worked for the French Embassy Trade Commission in Australia, assisting French companies in Australia and New Zealand, and also having Easy Mile offices in Berlin, Singapore, Adelaide, and Denver. We're lucky to have him here in Colorado and that impressive passport stamp collection that comes along with it. Tyler Svitak specializes in solving problems at the intersection of technology and urbanism, including mobility initiatives at the City and County of Denver, Colorado Department of Transportation, and the American Lung Association. Colorado Smart Cities Alliance is the first and only statewide coalition of public, private, academic, and research organizations committed to advancing smart cities initiatives. And Tyler took the lead role of that group in 2019. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. We're going to open with a question that we'll present to each panelist. We'll ask you to take a few minutes, and we'll begin with Keita. A huge thanks first to Keita and everyone at Panasonic on both sides of the Pacific for inspiring the entire program. A lot of you know that Panasonic made headlines when they arrived in Colorado several years ago. We're happy to have them here. Keita, let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing on both sides of the Pacific, starting with what you're doing here in Denver.
Sure. I think, well, first of all, thanks for having me. Thanks for having us. And I would like to really appreciate on behalf of the Panasonic members. So I think before I get into too much detail, explaining in verbal, so let me start with the video, because video really, tells the story well. So if you can start the video, great.
fantastic. Thank you, Kata, to your communications team for putting together such a great video to help us not only understand what you're doing, but seeing some beautiful Colorado scenery along the way. So Kata, help us understand what the Panasonic team here in the United States is doing and how it might contrast from what Shiotsuke-san and his team is doing in Japan.
Sure. Yeah. So, we get, lots of, initiative going on between US and the Japan team. And, globally, Panasonic smart mobility business is a quite important business, to pave the future for the company. So from the US side, we will talk a little bit about, the later, V2X business. It's a vehicle everything technology that we started in the United States, especially in Colorado, and then expanding to some other states. So that's primarily the work that US team Smart Mobility Office in Denver is leading. And Shiotsuke-san, we'll talk about a little bit later. Also, as shown in the video, there are lots of initiatives going on. One of them is like autonomous, community shuttle or autonomous delivery robot, right? So lots of going on in between two countries. But in the high level, so I would say we Panasonic, working on the very interesting dynamics between Japan and US. So as you know, Panasonic is a company from Japan which has a long history, more than 100 years. And then particularly, we are pretty good at, creating, hardware manufacturing. So therefore, we have a long history of, long-lasting, trustworthy products. At the same time, we in Japan are not quite, advanced in the digital solution. So what we are trying to do is bringing the technology, especially hardware-oriented technology, coming from Japan, and then adding much more, digital solution layer from US side, so that we can bring in, both good sides for the both end and then making a new thing. So that's what exactly happening in a V2X business right now, because we do have a history of the V2X related technology in Japan, the system called ETC systems, and so there are a lot of knowledges and expertise coming from Japan and applying to the way that would work in the United States. So the creating a hybrid model is something that we are looking for.
Great. All right, to Shiotsuke-san, most of us, certainly in America, have known Panasonic in a variety of audio-visual contexts. So what is the core Panasonic technology, and how has that capability driven the current mobility business?
Yeah, a good question for me, Jim-san. Panasonic has a long-lasting consumer electronic business experience dating back to more than 100 years ago. Keda-san mentioned it. That helps the foundation of our mobility business, especially audio-video technology we have developed for many years, is the core of our technology. We are taking the expertise in long-lasting visual technology and tuning that into visual communication codec for remote vehicle monitoring technology that we showed in video. Also, with technology, another key element to enable autonomous robot or autonomous vehicle technology, the delivery robot has a couple of different sensors such as 2D, 3D lidars, cameras, GPS, and bumpers on sonars. We are applying all those technology and adding the latest cutting-edge digital technology such as AI, machine learning engine into the total solution for optimization or prediction and the secure monitoring system.
Sounds like quite an advancement over the past few years. Thank you so much, Shiotsuke-san. Chris,
please call me Yasu. Okay.
Okay, Yasu. Yasu, from this point forward,
yeah.
You bet. Chris, along the lines of the subheading of this talk, as mobility trends continue to drive a lot of new technologies for travelers and for the transportation system, we know connectivity between roadways, infrastructure, vehicles, and people will be very important. We also know that security and privacy is at a lot of the top of people's minds. So let's ask you to speak about how security and privacy are addressed with the technology systems that are being built.
Thanks so much for the question, Jim, and good evening, everyone. Good morning, Shiotsuke-san. Really appreciate the opportunity and glad to finally be on video. I missed that during our intro. But to dive right into your question, Jim, I'm really excited to give this example of connectivity in vehicles because it's actually the reason that I moved to Colorado to work with Colorado Department of Transportation as a starting point, and to work with many stakeholders across the United States and across the globe, and Japan included, on the importance of improving our transportation system, but making sure that we maintain a commitment and strategy on security and privacy as well. So I want to give everyone an example of how your vehicles today, any car that's more than 5 years or newer, is really like more of a computer than it is a vehicle. And I think we can all appreciate cars are becoming smarter and smarter, but they have a lot of ability to share data as well about what's happening on the roadway, what's happening inside the car, whether your windshield wipers are on or the pavement temperature might be freezing. That tells you a lot about what's happening outside. And that can really help DOTs, Departments of Transportation, and roadway operators better manage our roadways. So we want to make sure we capture that data, but we also want to protect people's privacy and make sure that their vehicles stay secure. So I wanted to share the example of the way that we're able to do that today. We're able to collect what's called a basic safety message out of every single vehicle that has the technology. And from that basic safety message, we don't know what type of car it is. We don't know the VIN number of the car, and we have no information at all about who the driver of the car is. But that driver can reliably and responsibly share that information with us so that we can better improve the safety of the roadways and reduce the congestion that many of us used to spend a lot of time sitting in. And then in terms of privacy, that same device, while it can share that data, it can't be identified because the device actually changes its identification every 5 minutes, and then it changes the way it changes its identification more frequently than that. So we have the ability to capture really high fidelity, valuable information, but not track people, no Big Brother stuff, and also to be able to do it in a secure and a private way.
Great. Love that answer. We're going to poke a little bit more on that topic a little bit later this evening. Thank you, Chris. Now let's speak with Betsy and hear from the State Office of Economic Development and International Trade. Betsy, let's talk about the relationship between Japan and Colorado as far as trading partners and the climate of Japanese FDI in our state. Where do we stand today?
Yeah, well, thank you, Jim, and thank you to the Japan America Society for having us today. This is a really exciting topic, and the state is excited to be a part of it. So, speaking of foreign direct investment, Japan is currently the 5th largest foreign employer in Colorado. There are over 50 Japanese companies, of course, Panasonic included, that employ over 7,500 people in the state of Colorado, which is great. And we see an opportunity to do even more and welcome even more companies to the state. There's, both of our economies are very diverse, and we see lots of opportunity. Of course, we'll be discussing the smart mobility space and those adjacent industries where we work closely together on software and IT and electronics and clean tech. But we also see additional opportunity in other industries such as aerospace, renewable energy, advanced manufacturing, and of course, outdoor recreation, which I know you talked about last year. So concerning trade, right now, Japan is Colorado's 4th largest trading partner. Our top exports include, of course, beef. And I believe that Colorado is the 4th largest US state exporter of beef to Japan. So it's a pretty big feat, being a smaller state to be number 4. But other exports include things like optics, medical and surgical instruments, industrial machinery, electrical machinery. But interestingly, the profile of our imported goods from Japan are very similar industries. So I think that really shows and it demonstrates the level of the value chain integration that exists between our two regions, and the opportunity really to explore more integration and more trade between our two areas. So thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. And we only have Betsy until 7 o'clock tonight. So I'm going to squeeze in a quick follow-up here, Betsy. I know that obviously Japan is a priority, not only for OEDIT, but especially Governor Jared Polis. He has talked about a trip to Japan. Can you give us an update? Is that still going to take place? And if so, when?
Yes, well, we certainly hope so. In fact, just the other evening, the governor participated in a seminar where there were about 240 Japanese companies that participated to talk about the investment climate here in Colorado. So we're excited. We're excited that we had such a great reception and a lot of follow-up on there. Depending on what the climate is like due to the pandemic and when we're able to travel. We are hoping that possibly sometime in the fall of 2021, the governor would be able to travel to Japan. He was scheduled to go this year, or last year, actually, I'm sorry, 2020. And of course, that had to be postponed. But in the meantime, we are holding a lot of virtual events like the one we had the other night and continuing to pursue partnerships and relationships prior to the governor's visit, hopefully in the fall.
Fingers crossed, we're certainly making progress. Thank you, Betsy. Let's turn to Tyler now for an understanding of the big picture of smart mobility and smart cities in our state. Tyler, can you give us an overview from the Colorado Smart Cities Alliance?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim. And thank you so much to the Japanese America Society for having me. I have the pleasure of working with companies like Panasonic and EasyMile and lots of other companies that work in the smart mobility space. And what's really interesting about the space is that in order for companies to be successful, to develop the right solutions to improving mobility, they really need government partners in order to test these solutions, to have access to the right of way, and to have partners in developing the right solutions. And so what we do is we focus on working with governments across our state that have an interest in being innovative and testing these new sorts of technologies in order to improve their communities. And so we have all sorts of projects across the state, including the first ever vehicle to grid electric vehicle charging stations, where the vehicles themselves are actually charging the building and the grid. We have projects using artificial intelligence to improve traffic flow and optimize traffic signals. And we also have projects using autonomous food delivery robots in order to make it that first and last mile here in Colorado. And so what's really interesting about the work that I get to do is there's always more opportunity. And when it comes to smart mobility, it's our number one concern of the jurisdictions we work with here, and the number one opportunity that they see for continued partnership with the private sector and testing these new sorts of things that can improve all of our lives.
Yeah, I'm very interested to talk a little bit later, Tyler, about the compatibility of all of these new innovations. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. I'll tee you up for that right now. Let's turn to Baptiste, though. And Baptiste, it's not all futuristic. The technology is currently in use, both in Colorado and in Japan. So tell us a little bit about EasyMile technology that's being used right now in factories, logistics centers, airports, and other areas.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim, and thank you everyone for the opportunity here tonight. You can hear my accent. I'm definitely not American, not very Japanese either. I work for a French company called EasyMile, and we have the chance to be a global company. We actually started being the global company from day one. Our CEO opened the headquarters in Toulouse, south of France, but also in Singapore the same day. And then after a few years, we actually opened offices in the US, in Germany, in Australia, and we even have a small team in Tokyo, in Japan. And as a company, we really believe in shared mobility. Shared mobility and autonomous technology to help this shared mobility. I think I have a short video that we can show to the group. Claudine, if you can play it.
Introducing the Tracked Easy, a groundbreaking driverless and zero-emission electric tow truck. Revolutionizes operational flexibility for ground transportation of goods on industrial sites, logistics centers, and airports. Follows predefined routes, warehouse management system orders, or on-demand requests via an app. Pulls up to 25 tons without dedicated infrastructure. Suitable for all weather conditions, indoors and outdoors. detects and avoids potential obstacles thanks to a full set of sensors. LiDARs, radars, stereo cameras, GPS, odometry, and inertial measurement unit. Wide angle of vision sees up to 100 meters at the front and 40 meters to the sides. V2X communication. Works with EasyMile Fleet Management Easy Fleet navigational software for mission management and route optimization. Tracked Easy, the ideal autonomous solution for industrial sites, logistics centers, and airports.
Thank you, Claudine. So really what we do at EasyMile, we're a tech company. Our job is to develop software, develop hardware to make sure that we can work with blue chip manufacturers. Typically, the Tracked Easy is manufactured by a company called TLD, the world leader for ground support equipment, to install this AV stack, autonomous vehicle stack, on their vehicles and make them fully autonomous. So you can see on my, just above my left shoulder that the Tracked Easy, fully autonomous, on my right shoulder that the Easy-10, fully autonomous 15-passenger shuttle. And so that's the kind of vehicle that we've been deploying all over the world. In Japan, we are currently operating at Narita Airport, for example, with JAL, moving luggage from the plane to the terminal with the Tracked Easy. We had a few projects with DNA in Japan with the Easy-10, and then here in Colorado, well, lucky enough to have quite some great partners in Colorado, like Tyler and the Colorado Smart City Alliance and Panasonic. And so we had great projects last year close to the airport with our Easy-10, and then this summer, the city of Westminster, and we have much more coming. We're working hard with Tyler's team and Chris' team on that. So Colorado, definitely a great ecosystem for us. First of all, because of all this alignment of experts that you have in the area around smart cities, and then being very fair weather, even if we have a bit of snow, a bit of rain once in a while. I mean, for testing autonomous vehicles, it's perfect because we have everything, including a lot of blue sky and sunny weather when we need to have that. So that's a great ecosystem for us, and EasyMile has been here for a few years and will be here for many, many years.
Well, great. We're glad to have you, Baptiste. Look forward to spending some time with you in person when we can get back to that normalcy. I want to highlight Chris and Shiotsuki-san for the next question. And we're going to talk about smart mobility relating to vehicles. And it's likely going to necessitate people giving up driving. And the question a lot of Americans, especially here on this side, how do we convince people that that's worthwhile? Chris, how do we get to the place where folks understand that it's safer for them, more efficient for them? That's a huge communications challenge, isn't it?
It is. You know, a lot of times we joke on some of our more technical projects that this is an 80% stakeholder communication project and a 20% engineering project. And while the engineering can be really hard, the communications is really critical to any type of successful technology implementation. And a lot of it comes down to things like we talked about before, where people naturally have, and for good reason, have privacy and security concerns. But I think in terms of vehicle ownership, autonomous vehicles, and the path that we may all be on in the future, my personal professional perspective is that it's not going to all happen everywhere all at once. It's going to happen in certain places where, you know, we really hope that the convenience, the comfort, and the safety of that improved experience is sought after instead of by any way forced upon anybody. And so I think that that's what we'll find happens is your car keys won't be taken away anytime soon. I can promise you that from a technical perspective, not even a policy or a regulatory perspective. But I think you'll find opportunities to choose to not pick up your personal car keys and instead go engage in a transit type application, or go engage in a rideshare or transit network type of opportunity. So that's sort of my perspective on how things are going to roll out. And I'll offer another thought that is not proven, but it's possible. I think we may find that our experience is not in car ownership anymore, but in car subscription. Just like you might subscribe to brands, I like to use the comparison to music. I used to own a lot of cassette tapes and then compact disc, and I owned that music and I could play it at any time. Today I own no music, but I have a very large library of songs through a subscription where I pay a monthly fee so I can continue to gain access to those. I think that we may find, autonomy or not, that our experience in travel and in automotive will slowly shift from ownership of a car to subscription to an experience.
I appreciate the comparison. Very good parallel. Yazoo, let's talk about the Japan side of this. A lot of us who have been to Tokyo, who have been to Nagoya, we know that most folks get around by train, and it's a lot different than it is in the United States, where 90% of us in non-COVID times still drive ourselves to work every day. So what are the challenges in Japan to adopting this and getting folks to maybe move to, as Chris pointed out, a subscription model for a vehicle?
Yep. So it's a very difficult question for me. I just try to shifting corporate portfolio from hardware to subscription model. That means corporate transportation.
Okay.
And we just try to make a smart city business in Fujisawa. Can I explain our smart city business? Can I?
Please.
So Fujisawa Smart City, Smart Town is one of the most well-known smart city initiative in Japan. Originally, Panasonic had a huge round to run manufacturing operation in the area for many decades. After we made a decision to close the factory, we did not just give land back to the city of Fujisawa. We even make land much more valuable to the city. So together with city of Fujisawa and many other partner companies, we decided to build a sustainable smart town with the concept of lasting more than 100 years. The town was launched in 2014 and continue to evolve even now. The town composed by more than 1,000 household healthcare center and commercial retail zone, etc. And the concept really focus on people's life. There is town management company and really force community together, listen to the voice of people, come up with new idea solution together with people. The key technology area, energy, mobility, security, healthcare, and community. But everything is very much designed based on the notion how we can enhance people's daily lives for 100 years. And additional to Fujisawa, there is the Tsunashima project in Yokohama City, which focuses more on commercial area and large apartment and the corporate R&D facility for Apple Japan and another companies. And also another one is Suita project in Osaka Prefecture. That is a new project coming soon. So there is a great chance. You are welcome to visit it to them. I can show one of the our activity for a better life. That's our concept to shift it to our next change business policies.
I can certainly see how that dovetails with what Chris talked about with the when these things start to come online and people will have the opportunity to see a smart city, it will certainly open their minds. So thank you so much for that perspective as well. Betsy, I'd like for you to take a moment if we can, because I know you have about 20 minutes left with us. Can you review, excuse me, some of the incentive opportunities that companies coming into Colorado have available to them?
Yes, thanks, Jim. So we have several performance-based incentives that we offer to companies who are either growing in Colorado or looking to move a headquarters here or a portion of their employees. The first one is the job growth incentive tax credit, and that gives a tax credit for every net new job that is created in the state of Colorado. We also have cash grants for really, strategic projects, and that's called part of our strategic fund. Again, that's a matching grant, but it's a cash grant to a company. And then we also offer what we call our location neutral also grant, which is if you are going to come here and have a portion of your employees work in rural Colorado, or work remotely from rural Colorado, then you can get an extra bump on that tax credit. But our office also administers the state's Advanced Industry Accelerator Program. And this provides seed capital funding for startup companies in the advanced areas, such as these are early stage startups in aerospace, IT and software, biosciences, electronics, advanced manufacturing. And many of these are involved in the smart mobility space. And while these grants are only available, the advanced industry grants, to Colorado companies, I think it really does demonstrate that Colorado is interested in investing in those industries of the future. And then by providing this early stage capital to these pioneering industries, we know that once monetized, these companies provide investment and partnership opportunities for Japanese investors.
Thank you so much, Betsy. A lot of opportunity there, that's for sure. And we know that those opportunities have been taken advantage of recently by some great aerospace companies, including, iSpace is Astroscale, two companies that have recently relocated to Denver.
Absolutely. We're excited about iSpace. Also, AGS Biologics, Japanese bioscience company, just moved into the AstraZeneca facility in Boulder, an exciting Japanese company to have in Colorado as well, just a recent acquire. So a lot of
great. Keep up the great work. Obviously, you're doing the right thing to attract those companies. Well, obviously, we're not commuting to work the way that we used to. Despite those lower traffic levels during the pandemic, safety is still a major challenge on roadways across the United States. So let's talk about solutions and where we think we can address safety problems right now and in the future. I'm going to open this up to the group. Tyler, let's start with you. Where do you think the safety wins will be?
It's a great question. And I think safety wins can come in a number of ways. And one of which Panasonic is very much leading in the vehicle to everything communication space. Everyone thinks of autonomy and driverless vehicles as the future of technology to help improve safety on roadways. And it absolutely will. Adaptive driver assistance systems are already in most vehicles. But regardless of whether your vehicle has any autonomy, being able to communicate in real time with other cars around you can help avoid up to 80% of all accidents that occur on US roadways. And this is a technology that you can retrofit onto your existing vehicle. And a lot of new vehicles will be coming out with standard. And so I think in the smart mobility space, people see that as the most near-term opportunity for the biggest bang for your buck. But of course, autonomy as well. And that's where companies like EasyMile come into the picture. And the different levels of autonomy. I think the concern that a lot of people have is that autonomy is not necessarily straightforward. People buy a Tesla or a new vehicle and think that their adaptive driver assistance system or adaptive cruise control can do everything for them. And you see videos of people sleeping or in the back seats of their cars, and people are dying. They are not using this technology responsibly. And so the transition between today's technology of autonomous vehicles And tomorrow is where we will get at some point where you will be able to let go of responsibility of driving. We're not there yet. And so I think that's a danger that everyone needs to be cognizant of, and connected vehicles can help fill that gap.
Baptiste, your company was introduced, so let's have you chime in here. What have your safety experiences been in the video that you just showed us, and with the operations you have both in the US and Japan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Tyler was spot on saying that the technology is evolving and the safety with it. And today, EasyMile does not focus on providing cars to people with autonomous features. Our goal is really to work on shared mobility, both on the passenger transportation with this kind of shuttle that I have just behind me for the first and last mile, for example. So the idea is to address the safety concern that's today in our industry by limiting the number of vehicles that you have driving on streets or driving on the campus. The idea with the Track TZ, which is the tow tractor, is to address the safety by limiting the number of drivers that you have and sending this kind of vehicles without any drivers in dangerous situations where it can be too hot to go, where you can have some kind of other risks for drivers to have operations 24 hours a day without having a driver sitting behind the wheel doing the same mile loop all day long for 8 hours and having inattention. So that's really what EasyMile is trying to do, trying to address all these niche opportunities first while we develop the technology. And then once the technology will be better and better, we'll obviously expand the use cases that we are working on. But right now we start where we can. And where we can are usually campuses, first and last mile, airports, industrial sites, where it's very easy today to spot on where you have safety incidents and insert these kind of vehicles in the existing processes to help with safety.
Great. Anybody else on the panel, would you like to jump in on the safety question before we move on?
Jim, I'd be happy to offer some perspective as well, because I think all of us have a responsibility on this just as much as we are seeking technology solutions to this challenge. I just wanted to say that change takes time and technology takes time. You all probably have experienced backup cameras in cars that you either have or have driven. That took almost 10 years to get either regulated and applied into the automotive community so that it became really a standard. You probably don't have to rewind your mind too far to think of a car you had that didn't have a backup camera. And that's a very obvious technology. And connected vehicle technology to us that are in this field is a very obvious technology as well. It's something, I like to call it the digital seatbelt of our generation. But I think we can remember that seatbelts met a lot of resistance before they were fully implemented and embraced and recognized as something that can truly save lives. So it will take us in this technology industry quite a lot of time to get this developed, to get it implemented, and to have it begin really having an impact on all of our lives. And the thing I wanted to say in the meantime, for myself, for everyone here, is get these things. It's not going to show up in my video. Cell phones are our problem. They are causing so much of the problem today. And so while we're waiting for this technology to help protect us better, and some people leaning too far into technology, like Tyler said, the best thing we can do is be mindful and responsible constituents when we get into cars and get these phones out of our hands so we can all be a lot safer today.
Great. Let's pivot to climate for a moment. The action that obviously we're all hoping will take a more prominent role in the US and Japan in the coming years, with new leaders in both countries announcing priorities in relation to both carbon emissions and climate change. We also heard recently President Joe Biden has committed to the United States fleet moving towards electric vehicles. So there's a lot of movement in a very short period of time here. I want to open this up to the panel. Can anyone comment on what we might expect to see from the federal level, if anything, in relation to smart mobility and the impact it may have on climate?
Well, I think I can jump in there. I've spent most of my career in the electrification of the transportation sector. And when the first EVs hit US roads in 2011, so much has changed. We have started with light duty passenger vehicles, and those were the only things available. We now have affordable class 1 through 8 fully electric vehicles that can travel 300 plus miles in one charge. And the charging itself has gotten a whole lot faster. You know, we're looking at 350 kilowatt hour fast charging that can fill a battery with 200 miles in 15 minutes. And so the market has evolved so much. And I think really you can look to states and from a policy perspective as to where I think the Biden administration is headed. If you look at California and Colorado, actually, you know, Governor Polis's first executive order was around electrifying the state fleet and making it easier for fleets to electrify themselves. And so you're going to see stricter emission standards that are pushing companies like GM, who recently announced that all of their vehicles will be electrified by, I believe, 2035. And I think the federal government will take the state's lead and enforce those new restrictions.
Who else would like to jump in on how the technology you are working on will impact climate?
Maybe so I can kind of introduce one of the technology that Panasonic is working on. We are actually working on very early stage, but EV charging aggregator, because we are expecting those commercial EV fleet will be expanding much more. And what would happen in utility side is there's no way that they can control those the energy precisely. So because there will be many more different type of the EV charging systems. So therefore our potential the software will be able to control many different EV charging systems and then aggregate into the one interface so that the utility side can monitor those progress of the energy usage. That's a new technology that we are testing in some cities in the United States. So hopefully, when this technology is material, hopefully we can bring it to Colorado as well.
Great.
I'll jump in as well. Of course, we're excited to work with the Biden administration on a number of new priorities. We're not sure what they're all going to be, but for instance, affordable housing, and placing that closer to transit hubs and closer to where people work. But also, the governor just last month released the Colorado greenhouse gas pollution reduction roadmap, which sets pretty aggressive targets to meet the state for its climate change goals. And part of this plan, of course, does address the importance of smart mobility and sustainable transportation development. Our Colorado Department of Transportation's Office of Innovative Mobility, of course, all of our partners are working on that. But I know that our work in the state is going to include, this work to meet those aggressive climate targets at the state level will include reducing vehicle miles traveled, behavioral changes, and then, of course, working with all of our partners here to meet those goals.
Before we move on, anyone else want to jump in on this very important climate piece?
I was going to add on that topic, quite similar to the safety, actually. Autonomous vehicles are going to help with that topic because of the driving style that they have, that is by definition more efficient. They don't take pleasure of accelerating and braking suddenly just before the traffic lights, which is very fun to do with a car, especially when we have a nice car, I fully admit, but also with the shared mobility. By removing or reducing the number of cars that we have on street, by using autonomous vehicles to help with the public transit system, for example, we spoke with the first and last mile earlier today. By removing the number of vehicles that we see on the road, it is safer, less probability to have accidents, but you also reduce the number of vehicles that are emitting gas that are bad for the environment. And so if you can put together autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles, then you end up having a safer system, which is also more green for the environment.
Great, Baptiste, thank you. I know that, Betsy, you only have a few more minutes with us, and we want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening. We'd also, before we extend a couple more questions, invite anyone who has questions for this panel to drop them in the chat feature, and that way, hopefully, we can get more questions from the folks who are joining us from around the country and around Colorado tonight. Betsy, thank you so much for joining. Any remarks before you take?
Well, again, this is an exciting topic. We'd love for Colorado to be a leader on this. So thank you, Panasonic, and everyone else who is working in this space. And we hope to continue a strong partnership with all Japanese companies. And as I said earlier, we welcome the opportunity to do additional business. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Betsy. Thanks for taking advantage of this opportunity to join such a great panel. Keep up the great work at OEdit.
Thank you, Jim.
You bet. All right, a couple more questions before we get to questions that are coming in from all of you who are joining us this evening. Tyler, we saw in the video that Panasonic played earlier, that beautiful view into the mountains along Interstate 70. There is a nightmare that takes place there on Friday and Sunday afternoons in the winter. The traffic is uncontrollable. So do you think there'll ever be a solution to that nightmare that is that mountain corridor traffic?
I hope so. I don't know that I have the answer, but I do know that there are a lot of companies that have presented innovative solutions for that I-70 corridor that CDOT have considered. I think what most people expect are more lanes. And in the case of I-70, you can't build more lanes. And I think what the smart mobility industry has recognized is that building more lanes doesn't even solve the congestion problem. It just induces more demand. And so, you know, ideas like Hyperloop and Arrivo those are companies that have presented ideas for solving that challenge through I-70. I think, unfortunately, in the near term, when we look at the Fast Tracks investment from RTD in the long term, those sorts of investments are really difficult to make. And I think we need to focus more on shared mobility and on technology in order to improve traffic flow through I-70, which is why CDOT and Panasonic chose the I-70 corridor for the first deployment of vehicle-to-everything technology in the state. And I think that's going to be our more near-term solution as opposed to Hyperloop and those sorts of technologies.
Yes, I'm guessing Hyperloop will be easier in places like Los Angeles and Las Vegas than it would through the Rocky Mountains and the difficult terrain that we're trying to traverse to get up and enjoy a good Saturday of powder in the mountains. Keita, I'd like to talk a little bit about the vision of Panasonic Mobility if we can. How can all of our Colorado partners best support and work with you on the Panasonic Mobility that you are working on with your team?
Sure, yeah, it's a big question. So let me start with the kind of our vision for our smart mobility initiative. So as you might be aware, in the video we showed, there's a mention about a better life, better world. So that's our, company, brand promises, and that's based on our company's, founder of the company. So what we are trying to do is, really enable us a better life, a better world in a smart mobility initiative. So if we just break down a little bit further, especially the initiative in Japan, really touching on the people's daily life, creating those, closing the gap over the last 1 mile, last 10 mile, bringing some people or start things from the store to the people, so that we closing really the last the gap in the people's daily life. So we are pretty much focused on the daily lives. That's more for the global perspective, and in some way that's more for a better life. And in the US side, as we mentioned already, V2X side, we are working on much more on the infrastructure side. So by enabling this kind of V2X technology and reduce the congestion, the fatal traffic, so we're making contributing to making the a better world happen. So having the both kind of technology coming from Japan and US, and then really enabling the better life, better world, I think that's our vision. And of course, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of opportunity for us to bring those technology. So maybe through the delivery, autonomous shuttles in somewhere in Colorado, in Denver area, I think that would be a great opportunities. And V2X, the Chris's team has been working on the CDOT for the I-70 elsewhere. But if we can bring that technology to elsewhere, I think there will be huge opportunity for both for Panasonic and both for the society.
Great. I want to get back to the question that I elevated a little bit earlier. And talk, I mentioned it to Tyler about compatibility. Each of you are working on sophisticated pieces of technology that we all hope someday will work together. Baptiste, you can start, or Keita, how do you help create not only Panasonic compatible technologies, but technologies that might be able to work with other companies or maybe even different initiatives. How are you approaching that?
Yeah, I can definitely start here. EasyMile is a pretty small company compared to Panasonic. We have 250 staff across the board, and we are very old in our industry, meaning that we are 6 years old. So, so we're not going to invent standards ourselves. We make suggestions, but then we also we try to be very careful working with the right partners, including Panasonic, to make sure that we go in the right direction. And the testing is so important. That's why EasyMile is not just developing technology in the lab and waiting for everything to be perfect before going to market, but we go to market quickly, obviously being reasonable in what we do while ensuring safety for everyone, but we go to market with partners such as transport operators, such as big integrators and technology companies like Panasonic, to make sure that we are developing our technology in the right direction and that our technology is compatible with what is currently used in the world. We're not coming here with a new system and telling all the people living in the US but worldwide to give up on everything they have to work with us. It's not the way it works. That's the other way around. And so for that, partnerships are key.
Who else would like to take a stab at the question about compatibility and how we best integrate the new technologies so many folks are working on?
I'm happy to take a stab at that one. It's a major issue, Jim, and I'm glad that you are flagging it. Fortunately, certain technologies like vehicle-to-everything communication have standards associated with them that govern the type of information that needs to be shared across make and model, across manufacturer, that helps to alleviate a lot of those burdens. But for example, when I worked at CDOT, we had 14 different devices that are on the roadway measuring something, right? Radars or camera or or RSUs that are deployed with Panasonic, and they all have their own system. And so there needs to be open, transparent, open source platforms that can consume data from any type of device, make sense of it, and then share it openly. And that's what we work on a lot with government is it's really difficult to streamline a technology. It's also really difficult to streamline a department within a government, right? Your public works department might go by X, your IT department might go by Y, and they don't talk to each other. And often those systems don't talk to each other either. And so standards help, and governance structure really helps within government as well.
Anybody else want to talk a little bit about this challenge that we have integrating and of course compatibility with the technology? If not, we have some good questions coming in. So Colin had a question in the chat, and his question is, what are the major hurdles of implementing smart mobility solutions? Are they government regulations, consumer pushback, auto manufacturers initiatives? There's a lot there, and I'm sure all of those are valid. Who would like to jump in and answer the question about the major hurdles of implementing smart mobility solutions?
Jim, I can jump in with maybe one consideration that we face as a challenge, but there are ways to solve. For those of us that work directly in the transportation space, it's always easy to say things like follow the money. And if you follow the money in transportation, you can see why we have such a challenge as Tyler speaks to it. We're a country in the United States of jurisdictions, right? We have cities, towns, counties, major metropolitan areas, and we have states. And the money follows all of those different jurisdictions. So when I leave my house in Denver, Colorado, I live in the north side of Denver, and I drive up to Summit County, I've probably passed through anywhere from 5 to 7 different jurisdictions. And all of those jurisdictions pay for roadways, implement technology, and manage those roadways, oftentimes in different ways. And in some states, it's very centralized, and the state has a lot of control over everything. Virginia and North Carolina are good examples of that. And in some states, it's very decentralized. Colorado is a home rule state, and counties take their tax dollars and really apply them to the local community. And it's good for a roadway experience, like the way your roads are paved and maintained, but it's challenging from a transportation system perspective. And so what I think we're facing, one of our biggest challenges we're facing in transportation is the way that money is divided up, the way that it's applied, and then the electrification challenges that we're facing as well. Because today transportation is paid for by how much gas you buy, how much fuel you buy, right? So I think some of the biggest challenges we're facing in transportation are we're a jurisdictional country, and that's where the money goes. And that money is running out because our cars are becoming much more efficient. When you use water in your home, you get a water bill and it tells you exactly how much water you used, and that's what you pay. I think we all need to be prepared for our transportation to start going that direction. We need to be prepared for what we use and for what we use to be applied to the whole system and not just to our own backyard.
A challenge, no doubt, but a good conversation to have. Thank you very much for the insight there, Chris. Anyone else want to talk a little bit about the major hurdles of implementing these solutions?
Well, at the risk of contributing too much of my opinion, I have lots of thoughts because we get to work with lots of governments to implement these types of solutions. And I think there are two additional barriers, and Chris was spot on, funding and the jurisdictional puzzle that our country makes up are primary barriers. But two other things also present themselves. One, governments are risk averse, and that's because they use taxpayer dollars. And so the way that things have been done are the way things are done. And it is hard to change opinions of fleet managers or roadway operators or traffic engineers who aren't used to doing things differently. But secondly, it's not all the government's fault. Doing and implementing these solutions is really difficult. And the private sector sometimes thinks that they can solve all of these challenges on their own in their own R&D department. And when this technology actually hits the roadway, we start to understand the barriers to actually being effective and the legacy systems that are out there today, right? There are 8 different traffic signal manufacturers. And if you want to work in this space, you have to understand how to integrate your solution into all of them in order to be effective. And so there's problems on the public and the private side.
Tyler, we're never worried about too much input. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Tori Silverstone has a good question in the chat. She first of all wants to thank all of the panelists, as we all do. She's a Colorado resident, and she's asking what you all would recommend as the top 1 or 2 action steps that we can take now to support some of these initiatives.
I'll jump in real quick. Support transportation funding. I think it's a big challenge in Colorado. On the previous one of the previous ballots we all got to fill out, not this most recent one, but before that, we had competing transportation initiatives that I think made it very challenging for us as people in Colorado to decide, I don't think we do both, but which one do we do? And it ended up failing and really continuing to challenge us in Colorado to take care of not just the infrastructure we have, but the things we really need to do to build a better future for ourselves and for the people coming after us. So, this country has consistently since 2012 received a C-, D+ or worse on our infrastructure grade. So all of us, whether you're in the transportation field or not, we need to pay more for transportation. It's just the reality. Our transportation bill is not coming in the mail, and it doesn't reflect the cost of what it takes to support and continue that. And transportation is really the nervous system or the backbone of our economy. So when you invest in transportation, you invest in the growth of Colorado, from my perspective.
For the benefit of the folks who may not be familiar with what Chris is referencing, in the previous election, there was competing transportation bills, and there's probably a political science white paper you can find that would point to that one of them was introduced to compete with the other in order to create the confusion that led to both of them failing. And it just speaks to the challenge that we have, especially in a state when Colorado, when all of those initiatives have to go through the ballot box. So thanks, Chris, for that perspective. Anyone else want to maybe mention one or two action steps that we can take?
I think giving its chance to shared mobility, that it takes longer to take public transportation. It can be a bit more expensive, and it is a big change in our everyday life. But that's the way we can solve a lot of issues around safety, around gas emissions, and it's pleasant. I mean, I commute by train. Before COVID, I was commuting by train every day to go to the office, and I was just reading in the train, and that was actually very pleasant to start my day with reading for 25 minutes instead of being stuck in traffic for 35. So it is a big work, it is a big change, but give a chance to shared mobility.
Great. Chris says, amen, Baptiste. So I think he echoes strongly those sentiments. As Americans, we certainly, 90% of us, I mentioned, drive our own cars to work in non-COVID times. And about 40 years ago in the United States, we introduced HOV lanes, which we thought would solve the problem and have done nothing to solve the problem. And so really, we're looking to these sort of solutions and really behavior changes. And I think that's key. Some of us have to just take the step, right? And that's a good action step. So thank you for that answer. Anyone else want to chime in on this before we get to the next question?
I'll just say one short thing, and that is get out of your comfort zone every once in a while. Try something new. I think it kind of aligns with Baptiste's point of view, but one of the interesting thing about the e-mobility or e-scooter micromobility revolution that's taken place over the last 3 years is that scooters seem to be fun enough to get people to get on them and try them for once, right? There are a lot of transportation services out there, including the bike in your garage. And so whatever you do on your daily commute or run to the grocery store or whatever, get out of your comfort zone and try something different. And it'll start making you think differently about your transportation options. And maybe you'll notice that you like something more than what you currently do.
Yeah, good point. Thank you very much. Appreciate that one, Tyler. A good question in the chat, and I'm going to direct this to our Panasonic friends because V2, vehicle to everything, I've heard from Panasonic. So what's the difference between connected vehicles, V2X, and autonomous vehicles?
I'll be happy to jump in real quick. I'm full of metaphors, so you'll have to forgive me for the relentless amount of metaphors. So I like to think of autonomous vehicle as stepping in for the driver, right? A computer is driving instead of a person driving. And a computer can be very good at driving a car individually, but it's still a selfish individual driver, just like many of us are selfish in the way that we drive cars, right? V2X or connected vehicle technology is the difference between a single fish swimming around by itself, going wherever it wants to go. That's how we drive. That's how autonomous vehicle drives. Connected vehicle technology gets all of the cars and the fish to drive together in a school of fish. And so that connectivity layer is really, really important to improve the capacity of the roadway, the efficiency of traffic, and to prevent those really disruptive things like Baptiste was talking about, where someone slams on the brakes, looks at their phone and swerves. That's what causes congestion. And so we want connectivity in place to make us today drive more effectively and more efficiently, and to make autonomous vehicles in the future become that school of fish.
I love the metaphors. Keep them coming because they work for all of us. And I'm sure it must be incredibly frustrating for someone, and so many of you on this call, to drive in American traffic, knowing that the bottlenecks and the tapping of the brakes and the lane changes, all of these unnecessary things lead to that congestion. I'm frustrated as folks like you, I can't imagine. We have a good question for Yazo, if you don't mind, sir. Is it possible, you mentioned Fujisawa and the smart city.
Yeah, sure.
For folks to actually tour if we come to Japan?
Yeah, we are very accessible. You are coming our smart city. Not only the Fujisawa, we have several test bench in Japan. So I can introduce myself. Great.
We would look forward to that, and I think a lot of us would like to see Fujisawa.
Thank you so much.
Yes. We have another couple of comments I wanted to get to here from folks that may be asking additional questions here. Lauren has pointed out that she lifted home after grabbing the bento box from Tokyo. It was cold here in Colorado, but it's great to hear we're seeing some of those behavior changes. We have a lot more options than we had even 6 or 7 years ago with the advancing train lines and the A line now taking folks from Denver International Airport directly to downtown. So we're proud of where Colorado is coming and excited to see things like Fujisawa and the smart city in Japan. There is so much that is going on right now around the world, and we're excited to be a seat of it here in Colorado. And obviously Panasonic and Easy Mile, two of the great companies that we know are working so hard in this space. I want to throw it back over to Claudine, because I know you probably have a couple of closing comments and maybe a mention of an upcoming event or two. Thank you all to our panelists. I had a great time with this conversation. My only regret is that we didn't get to do it in person. Hopefully we'll get the chance to do it in person next time, but thank you all very much. Claudine, we'll turn it back over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jim. And thank you to all of the panelists. This was really fantastic. I learned a ton. Peter Kelly has used the A line many times when he comes to visit Colorado. So I know he's very familiar with that train line. Thank you all again. Shiotsuki-san, I really hope you come to Colorado one day when travel resumes, and we will treat you to a great dinner that we wish we could have given you tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I love the Jim's back picture.
Yes.
I also play golf, very good.
Oh, nice.
Great.
I will come back to the Denver office.
Please do.
Yes, if you come to Colorado, I will take you here.
And Keita and Chris and Baptiste and Tyler, thank you all so much. I greatly appreciate the time that you dedicated to this event. Peter, please extend our thanks to everyone at the embassy. And thank you all for joining us. We do have some events coming up on our website. We're trying very hard to kind of keep this community dialogue very active. I greatly appreciate all of you for helping us get through this crazy time. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me directly. I can connect you with the panelists. We have this recorded and it will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. So I will share that once it's complete. Thank you all and have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.